up thank you, with Karen Sack about 4.5 years ago. So we've been driving forward, and this is our second full call for proposals out of Aura. And as you know, this was launched on Earth Day this year, and this is a call that's been funded by the UK Blue Planet Fund, and we are very appreciative of their support in not only Aura but also this call more specifically. So this webinar is really around providing you with as much information as we can give to you practically around the submitting a proposal, and the kind of things that we're looking for, the focus of the call itself, and how to apply. And we will we'll end with that a little bit. I'm just going to provide you a little bit of an understanding and an overview of Aura for those of you who don't know, only for the fact that I think it's important to understand where we're driving this from. Next slide, please, Jack. So I think we're all fairly aware, or I think we're all very aware of the fact that a healthy ocean and a stable climate are really two sides of the same coin. We're obviously seeing ocean warming leading to more extreme weather, and with that, sea level rises, ecosystem changes, the impact on people, and on those who are, and of course on the ocean itself. So with that, we're very cognizant of the fact that there's a need for us to drive finance into the space for nature positive and net zero coastal resilience needs, and for that we need to rapidly increase the amount of money, amount of finance going into the space. There is a massive gap at the moment, and we believe that, in fact, of course, through our membership, we're all of the opinion that if we can restore blue nature, then we're able to protect the critical sort of impact buffers and the biodiversity reservoirs that provides this food, the economic security to many billions of people around the world. Next slide, please, Jack. So Aura has a mission. It's I think uniquely designed to meet this challenge, and the heart of that is around building resilience and the adaptive capacity of marine and coastal ecosystems, and the coastal communities around the world that rely on them. In fact, we've just come back from Tanzania and South Africa, meeting with a couple of our project partners on the ground, and it's humbling and indeed inspiring to see what they're actually undertaking at the moment, and the work that they're doing in the local communities to provide that resilience building and capacity building opportunity for those people. And what we're doing is being able to drive that investment through or into ocean and nature-based solutions. That's a really sort of a critical piece of the puzzle for us, and of course around the risk multipliers like overfishing and pollution as well. Next slide, please, Jack. One of the sort of the focuses for us is, or I suppose one of the key pieces for us is around our theory of change, and indeed what we're looking to try and do alongside our partners in connecting the sort of international finance and insurance sectors to governments, non-profits and other stakeholders in the global south to develop these financial products to incentivize investment into coastal and nature-based solutions. So in fact, if you do go back one slide, sorry, Jack, our goal is by 2030 to activate at least $500 million into investment into this space, which is looking to help make 250 million people, or I suppose, 250 climate vulnerable coastal people more resilient to climate and ocean risks. So it's a key and critical, I suppose, North Star for us, and an abiding focus on not only those in the Secretariat, but also our members as well. Next slide, please, Jack. We have currently 75 members. We've only been going a couple of years, so it's fantastic to see the direction of travel. They include, as you can see here, finance and insurance, insurers, alongside brokers and governments, and public sector and international institutions, and multilateral development banks, NGOs, and academic partners as well. So it's a really collaborative effort. We've identified and have about $37 million invested into Aura to date, to really drive these innovative finance and insurance solutions to build coastal and ocean resilience. And many of our members are either providing in-kind or cash contributions to Aura. And in terms of our government partners, the US, the UK, and Canada have been particularly focused on driving this funding into the space. But we also have many philanthropies as well. So Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation, Swiss Re Foundation, Builders Initiative, who are also providing hugely important monetary support into Aura and to the programs that we are running. Next slide, please, Jack. So we have three priority pathways, as you see here. These have not changed since the beginning, and are very much sort of the ways in which we see us being able to make that change, and indeed to drive the funding into the space. That's really sort of focused on one is being a financial innovation, really looking to provide and pioneer innovative and scalable insurance and finance products, the ability to leverage and influence public and private investments, so looking at the sort of the public-private partnerships to drive investment into coastal natural capital, and then also looking to surface and incubate and then scale finance and insurance solutions that build resilience in investing in nature. So it's a really key and critical area of focus for us. And I know that many of those people or those organizations that are working with us already are very much interested and have this focus as well. This all has to be based on our understanding of the space. And so, of course, everything is really based on science and research. We have a key and critical science partner in the Stockholm Resilience Centre, but others as well. And indeed, they are really important in building the understanding of the space, to ensure that what we're building and what we're developing is based on scientific research and understanding. And then the final piece of our puzzle is really around policy and governance, how we were able to inform and advance and drive public and private policy commitments that ensure that nature is integrated into building resilience and understanding how we can develop and deliver against the SDGs. So it's a really critical piece, and certainly connecting both the global south alongside the global north in policy is really an important part of what we're trying to undertake. Next slide, please, Jack. Yeah, if you can go to the next one, please. Just to let you know anyway that we've currently supported 49 different projects, almost extensively in LDCs or coastal LDCs and small and developing states and SIDS, and really focused on of course on the global south. I think it's a really important thing to note that Some of the examples, if you haven't been onto a website, please do have a look. But the scalable finance and insurance products that we are focused on, everything from parametric insurance measures to protect the Mesoamerican reef in Mexico, Belize, Honduras, and Guatemala. We focused on livelihood insurance for small-scale fishers in the Philippines. We focused on or supported blue carbon and resilience credits to integrate a resilient benefit into the valuing mangroves. And we're also working on an MPA blended finance facility as well. So, those are just a couple of examples of what we're already doing. But in terms of this call for proposal, we do, and indeed the UK's Blue Planet Fund is looking to drive the same kind of focus as well. Now, UK's Blue Planet Fund is evidently, or has been going for a couple of years now. We are looking to drive further funding into this space. We have a multi-year grant with them, and we were obviously, as I said before, appreciative of their support. And I think very well aligned in what we're trying to undertake. And indeed, the Secretariat of Aura, alongside Defra's our colleagues in Defra, will be working together to identify the projects that are funded. It's the work that we're doing is really sort of developing and identifying very new or potentially new as well as scalable opportunities to around those projects. Sorry, if you can go to the next slide, please, Jack. And we've been asked and we've developed two different types of support. First is a pilot grant, so really providing a slightly smaller funding amount between $50,000 and $150,000, really to, as it says here, tailored to those organisations to test and pilot innovative solutions. Now, that's not always the case. It doesn't always have to be a pilot project necessarily. There are some projects that are slightly larger or have been going on for a little bit of time, but you still are only able to take in or able to use that slightly smaller amount of money. And on the other side of that, we have what we're calling a project grant. So really a larger grant between $150,000 and $500,000, really to help to scale these solutions. So, and as you see on the right-hand side there, it also we're expecting these to be around between 12 and 24 months, ordinarily probably 24. Next slide, please, Jack. So there are various criteria, and I'm sure you'll have seen within the or on the website that there are criteria around what we're after and what we're looking for, but they must, in the first instance, fall into one of the Aura's priority pathways, which I've already talked about. So financial innovation, science and research, and policy and governance. And then next slide, please, Jack. And then we'll also be looking at hopefully the focus on innovative finance and insurance products, but also we're very happy to see research in the space as well. I think that that's been maybe something that we haven't seen quite as much of to date, but happy to see those research proposals as well. Ultimately, we want to, of course, look to promote the development of coastal and ocean NBS, so nature-based solutions. There's a lot of work that we're already doing in that space, and keen to provide further funding into that area as well. We do need to ensure that they align with the priorities of those local communities, and one of the things that we are very aware of, or we've we've been given an indication by our steering council is that the projects need to be led by a not-for-profit partner. So it is possible for private sector partners to play a role, of course, but not necessarily a leading role. So if there are private sector partners on the call, then of course you're very welcome, but there needs to be a not-for-profit sector or more local not-for-profit organization as part of the proposal itself. I think obviously key here is around how we are able to build that economic, social, and cultural resilience for those coastal communities. And of course, and it may well be that it's part and parcel of the outcome of the project, but be a biodiversity positive as well. Next slide, please, Jack. We have provided a fairly well, I know there are a lot of words on this slide, but it's important that that we have provided you with all the information that we can around eligibility or geographical eligibility in the main, and this is obviously linked, well, not obviously, but this is linked to the ODA countries that are eligible, and that there are no sanctions set up by the US. And the reason for that is that Aura is a US 501c3, so charity based over there. And as you can see here, there are many countries that are eligible. Please do make sure that the project that you are proposing ticks one of those. Next slide, please, Jack. Great. So project evaluation. So this is an important part of what we do once you have submitted your proposal into submittable, and we look at these 7 different areas of focus. Each one is scored. So impact is scored out of 10, as is innovation, equity, and ultimately we are focusing on how impactful, how innovative, or how how important you see equity, and indeed all the other elements there as well into the project. And so what we're looking for is the most impactful. We're looking for innovative solutions as we looked to evaluate these projects. So do make sure that when you're going through the form, that you are ensuring, and the project is hitting all of these different areas here. It's it's something that we evaluate not just in the Secretariat, but we will also bring in other external partners to help us to do this, and then over the course of this summer, or at least the Northern Hemisphere summer, so through July and August, and into the start of September, we'll be evaluating all the projects that come in. Jack, next slide, please. Now, I'm not quite sure whether Linda or yourself, Jack, is going to nip on to this MEL piece.
Right, so I'll take over from here. Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Linda Nsepel, and I am here to speak on all things related to monitoring, evaluation, and learning. Okay, so first thing to note is that monitoring, evaluation, and learning is important for Aura and UK BPF. The reason being that MEL allows us to measure and track progress of project activities, and also ensures that they are also in alignment with Aura's theory of change and mission, and also that of the funding agency. So all projects are expected to carry out their own MEL activities in order to meet the information needs of their projects, and also report on progress and learning. And projects are expected to carry out the following responsibilities. So each project has to develop a MEL plan, And this MEL plan will be specified in the data and collection strategy and methods section of the progress reporting template, which will be provided. Also, projects are expected to set targets and collect data against specific indicators, which forms part of the indicator reporting. And they are also expected to participate in workshops. So basically these workshops, we call them induction workshops, and also we have periodic and final learning workshops or webinars. Then they are also supposed to provide progress on progress reporting, basically to update the team on what has been going on. And then finally also submit a report which has progress on the results and lessons learned. Next slide, please. Okay, so ORA has 6 overarching indicators, which you will find in the ORA indicator guidance document. And there are 9 additional indicators which also track progress against the respective ORA impact pathways, which Chip has already mentioned. So the first one being financial innovation, science and research, policy and governance. So basically in the indicator guidance, you'd see the various definitions of each of these indicators. And also in the application form, you're expected to describe how you generate and support evidence on the progress against each of these indicators. Now, these indicators form the basis of the Alliance's monitoring, learning, and evaluation procedures, which are linked to the priority pathways. And also they are integrated into the life cycle of all ORA projects. Okay, so it's important to also bear in mind that targets need to be set for ORA indicators 1 on people supported, and ORA indicator 2 on investments leverage, and other indicators are required as applicable. And so these targets which will be set are going to be assessed as part of the project assessment criteria. And yes, there are several indicators that are context specific, and well, projects will not be penalized if they don't fill in all indicators. So basically the MEL team would guide you on how to set these indicators. So if you're in doubt, we will be available to assist. And also when you access the document, you realize that some of the indicators I've already mentioned 2, which are very important and need to be reported on. And we have those that are required as applicable, and there are some that are optional. So would do well to provide guidance on how to work that out. And once projects are selected, yes, we will ensure that these targets are well set, and we'll do well to check in with the projects to make sure that they are reporting accordingly and within the timelines that will be communicated. And with that, I will hand over to Jack.
Thanks, Linda. Great to hear. And yeah, as I think it's sort of important to note, although that at this stage it might be sort of quite a long way away for some, you know, the MEL side of and the reporting and indeed the analysis of the impact that the projects are making is really critical, not only to us to be able to sort of show progress, but also to the Blue Planet Fund and the and where their and how their money is being spent. So just very briefly on the timeline, because I know that we're sort of coming up to the end of this presentation, and we can jump into questions. But you know, as you know, the proposal or the submittable is open. So applications close on the 2nd of July at midnight in the UK. Over the course of the summer, so in fact, very briefly, actually, just on the submittable, on submittable itself, if you do start an application, then it will stay open. So, you don't have to have done everything all in one time. It'll save it, or it should save it anyway, and you can go back to it at a later date. It's fairly, I hope, quite intuitive, and obviously everything that you need to do or you need to fill in is in there. Obviously, if you do have any questions, then we are on hand to help you, and you please do get in touch as necessary, because we're very happy to help you or help answer those. And the email for that is info@oceanriskalliance.org. So that's info@oceanriskalliance.org. Now, over the summertime, or the Northern Hemisphere summer, we'll be undertaking to assess those projects, as I've already mentioned, and hopefully by September or so, we'll have identified the ones that we want to take forward, and we'll propose those to the UK government, and we'll hopefully get some green lights. Over the course of the next couple of months after September, we'll be looking to contract those projects with yourselves, and we will hope to be able to announce, if not before COP, at COP in the UAE in December. So that's the timeline for application and driving that forward, and of course the implementation stage or phase will be, of course, through 24 and 2025 as well. Next slide, please, Jack. I think I've already pretty much said this. All the information that I've already imparted to you around how you apply on Submittable on the portal itself. There is, of course, quite extensive, we hope, enough information in the guidelines for applicants. It's pretty comprehensive, but as I said, if you do need any assistance, please do email us on info@oceanriskalliance.org. Next slide, please, Jack. So I think that's it for us. So there's half an hour of presentation, so that's pretty much on the dot, which is great. I know that Jack has been keeping an eye and keeping tabs on the questions, so I'm going to leave it to Jack for a second whilst I take a look at the questions as well. But Jack, you may have already determined where you want to start.
Yes, thank you, Chip, and thank you everyone for putting your questions in the chat, either directly to me or to the group. I'm just going to start going through them in the order in which I received them, so just going to move down chronologically. Some of these are fairly straightforward and we can provide very clear answers. Some of them, which are more just very specific, might require additional follow-up over email, and we can absolutely do that as well. So one first question, which came through a direct message, was asking if full Aura members are able to apply for the call for proposals, and would this be perceived as a conflict of interest? I can provide a simple answer, and then Chip can add on as needed. So all Aura members are allowed to submit proposals to the CfP, but the evaluation of the projects, as Chip specified, is undertaken only by the Aura Secretariat. So the Aura membership don't have any role in evaluating and selecting these projects. That is done purely by the Aura Secretariat, and then also with the funder of this called the UK Blue Planet Fund. So to ensure there is no conflict of interest. One other point on how we work this, we really do encourage applications both from Aura members and non-Aura members. And the reason we do that is because we really want to ensure that we're not being narrow in our focus by only receiving applications from people we know. We really do encourage applications from from any organizations around the world, member or non-member, provided they of course meet the eligibility criteria, which Chip outlined and which is detailed in the guideline for applicants. Okay, So the next question, which was also a direct message to me, was asking if we could talk a little bit more about the types of projects that this grant could support. For example, and to give examples of additional finance and insurance products. And this question also specifies if small-scale sustainable aquaculture could be a fit. So the answer to that is yes. In terms of aquaculture, to give some more detail about the types of finance and insurance tools which Aura has supported to date, again, I would encourage you to go onto the project section of our website where we have summaries of all the tools we have supported to date, or most of them in any case. But just to give you a quick run through, we've supported everything from blue types of credits, for example, blue bonds, blue carbon, resilience credits, improving traceability and technology to improve the value chain for small-scale fishers, to insurance products, including both personal insurance and also parametrics. So we really do think quite broadly about what financial and insurance innovation means. Having said that, just because we haven't supported a particular financial insurance innovation to date, does absolutely not mean that we will not support it during this call. So just because you don't see the particular financial innovation which you want to deploy in the list on our website, does absolutely not mean that we're not interested in potentially funding it in the future. But Chip, I don't know if you have any additional comments on this.
No, I think you've answered it, Jack. Thank you.
Fantastic. So the next question is about who can apply for the call. And the question is specific, asking if can private sector not lead a project, even if they are submitting a proposal with no profits? Chip, I'll hand this one over to you, I think.
Yeah, thank you. Look, I think that you know, what we need to do, and of course what we have, and so we will assess each project on its merits. And if we see that there's a project that we think is that ticks many of the boxes or all the boxes and comes out with a high score, but there isn't a NGO partner or a local partner as the lead, then we will, and indeed part of our assessment is to also to pick up the phone or Zoom or Teams with you to understand a little bit more about the project itself. If we think it's a really innovative and important project that it could potentially be impactful, of course, but also scalable and replicable into the future, then I think that what we would do is we'd be looking to encourage you to identify that local project partner, and we'd be happy to engage you in that process. I think it's really important that we're not just here as a black and white organization that literally sort of cuts off saying, okay, well, if you haven't done this, then you're out. We're keen to encourage and ensure that some of these amazing project proposals are brought to the fore and do get funded. So we'll do as much as we can to help you, and if that means that we need to provide further advice to you, and or perhaps look to work with you to identify that other partner, then that's fantastic. That would be fine. It may well be that we have to sort of push you to a separate funding year. As I said previously, we do have a sort of a multi-year funding from the UK, and that provides us with the opportunity perhaps of being able to push that project into a second year. I hope that's answered the question.
Thank you, Chip. So and the next question is about what costs are not eligible for these grants. And I assume this question is referring to the budget section of the call for proposals application form and what costs are allowable in the budget, which you submit as part of the proposal. So the budget template, which you will see in the application form, is structured around some key areas. Those are personnel, so salary, wages, consultant costs, travel and accommodation, communications, administrative costs, indirect, and other. So, and for each of these, you have the opportunity to provide obviously the amount in USD, as well as a description of that particular funding line. So obviously, the reason we have other as a line in here is we realize that all projects are different and that some budgets will not be able to fit all of their line items into what we've already given. So for example, certain capital expenditures, for example. So while we don't have any additional specific guidance about what cannot be included, obviously, the 2 points I would say would be, obviously, when we look at the budgets, we're looking very carefully to ensure that the budget matches the activities, and those activities match the eligibility criteria, which Chip has already gone through. So if we see budget items and budget lines which do not meet the eligibility criteria or the activities you've specified, that is obviously an immediate red flag for us, which we would seek to clarify with you. However, if you do have questions about a very specific particular type of cost, which you're unsure if you should add it in to your project, I'd please just encourage you to email info@oceanriskalliance.org, and we can have a further conversation, because I do know some of these conversations, some of these discussions can get quite detailed. So please do email us if you have those specific questions about your budget, which you want to submit. The final thing I would say about budgets is, so the budget table you'll see in the application form is simple, and we deliberately did that. So we weren't creating huge amounts of work for the applicants to submit, but for selected projects, a more detailed budget will be required as part of the contracting process, and the Aura operations team will support the selected projects in that process. Okay. So moving on to another question, and we've had a couple of these questions, so I hope we can cover many with this, which is about those who submitted proposals to Aura's call for proposals last year, which was funded by the Government of Canada. And first of all, is their project still under consideration under that call? And if not, should they resubmit that project to this call? Chip, I'll hand that one over to you.
Thank you. Well, look, we obviously appreciate everybody submitting proposals. We had over 80 proposals last year, and we, as I think you're probably aware, identified 10 of those projects to move forward and were funded. Of course, there are a number of projects that we communicated with, but they didn't get funding, and for those who had no communications, we apologize. But with so many projects to run through and project partners or potential project partners and moving all those forward with quite a small secretariat, we weren't able to communicate with everybody. So if you didn't receive any comms from us, then it means that project didn't reach the required standards. You're very welcome to reapply with that project, but I would envisage that if we weren't in contact with you before, then there may have been a need to, whether it be around innovation or replicability or about equity. I'm not quite sure. It depends upon each and every project proposal. So I would suggest you might want to reapply. But as I said, if you want to, please do email info@oceanriskalliance.org. We can provide maybe a more specific answer to you. Okay, next question, please, Jack.
Yeah, of course. So moving on to the next question. So the first one is, how exactly does Aura define equity under the project selection criteria, which is the criteria which the Aura Secretariat uses to evaluate projects? So excellent question. And for the project selection criteria, detailed descriptions of exactly how we define them are all available in the guideline for applicants, which is attached as a PDF in the application page on the Aura website. But in brief, what we're really looking for is that the project demonstrates potential to improve gender equity and human rights and gives special consideration for vulnerable groups and communities. So here we're obviously looking at women, girls, indigenous groups, people with disabilities, and other vulnerable communities, obviously dependent on the context. And high scoring proposals under this section would be those which really show transformative ability to improve gender equity and human rights benefits, and also involves those vulnerable communities as stakeholders in the project. Another question is about how do you typically make connections with blue bonds / insurance? So what I think this question means, and Chip, please add, is around, how do projects make connections with private sector partners for these, to deploy these kinds of instruments? So the answer here is that we expect projects to apply with the partners which they think which are needed to undertake and deploy the project activities. So for example, if your project needs a private sector partner to deploy a blue bond, we do expect that the project lead, who has already done certain amounts of outreach and have brought these partners on board before they apply. So we can see that in the application. Now, obviously, we do realize that many organizations do not have these kinds of connections, and we can also provide a small amount of help to facilitate this process. However, we do expect that process to be fairly significantly underway, as we simply don't have the capacity to make those connections for all the projects. And also the fact that the higher scoring projects will be the ones who've already made those strong connections, because then they'll be judged to be more likely to be able to deploy and be successful. But Chip, I don't know if you have any addition to that answer.
No, I think it's just a case of the fact that, as Jack says, the connection to the insurer or other private sector partner is made by yourselves. We're not in a position to be able to do that for you, although we do have a number of insurers and other private sector partners as part of Aura's membership. And I think, just in terms of the next question around, looking for new partners alongside, those of AXA and Swiss Re, etc. Of course, we're very keen to have you identify, other insurers. It's just the fact that AXA and Swiss Re are part of Aura doesn't mean you have to use them. We're very open to to making this as open as possible. So I think that probably covers off that last question.
Yeah. Thanks, Chip. So moving forward then, there's a question about project end dates. So as Chip said, we expect projects to begin and be contracted on or around COP28. So that will be approximately November to December of this year, 2023. So project implementation timelines are up to 24 months. And we expect the majority of projects to be between 12 and 24. And in our experience, most will want 24 months. So that would then take the implementation timeline to approximately November to December 2025. But again, we do have some flexibility there because what we're really looking to help our project partners do is just for them to fulfill their objectives and their deliverables in the timeline which best suits them, which is why we have given some flexibility there. So moving on, there's an additional question. There's a question about eligibility requirements beyond the geographical one. Yes, there are. As Chip went through earlier in this presentation, all projects must fall into one of Aura's priority pathways. And in addition, there is eligibility criteria around being, advancing nature-based solutions, equity and local partners, and being climate positive. And you can see all of these are written out very clearly in the guideline for applicants. I should also note that we will be sharing this presentation as a PDF after the webinars today. So you'll also have it there as well. Okay, so there's another question around if Aura expects to have other calls in the future. And Chip, I'll hand this one over to you.
I'm just trying to work out where that one is. Yes, there will be likely other calls. I've got to admit, depending upon how many projects we identify out of this one, out of this call for proposals, it could well be that there are so many good ones here that we're actually able to utilize this call for the second year of the grant funding from the UK government. I can't give you that assurance at this stage. I can't tell you whether we're going to have a specific call for proposals next year either. But we are engaged with governments and engaged with philanthropies and others as well, some of whom would like to see a call for proposal specifically for them. And if that's the case, then we will look to put out another one. So at this stage, I can't say for sure whether there will be one next year, but of course, we do have multi-year funding from the UK government. And so that does mean that we will be looking to identify further projects next year.
Great, thank you, Chip. Then we have a question about, is there a preference for single or multi-country projects? It's a very good question. The answer is we have no preference. And Aura has funded projects which are both multi-country and single country. The only comment I would make is a key aspect of which projects will be assessed is the degree to which they can be scaled and generate systematic change. And obviously there are many ways to demonstrate that, but one way projects can demonstrate that is showing that their financial solution could be piloted in and deployed in other countries. And we have funded multi-country projects which have sought to do that. Having said that, we've also funded many projects which have just deployed in one country. So really no preference there. I would just encourage you to, again, make sure that your project is matching the project selection criteria, which all projects will be evaluated upon. Okay. We have an additional question about payments of the fund and asking, once the grant agreement is signed, will there be an upfront payment, or will payments be based on certain results / milestones? So it's a very good question. So the way Aura has done this to date is there is one upfront payment, which will be a certain percentage of the full grant total. And then there'll be additional payments spread throughout the project implementation period, which are usually tied to certain reporting deadlines. And then there'll be a final payment once the project has finished. But that payment schedule is worked out on a project by project basis, because we obviously do realize that every project is different and you're all operating in different countries and under different circumstances. So when projects are selected for funding, the project organization would work with the Aura operations team to identify and finalize that payment schedule. We also have a question about what additionality means in the project selection criteria. And that's a very good question. What we mean when we say additionality is we need to ensure that if the project is which you've applied for to Aura is part of a larger pre-existing project, we need to ensure that the deliverables which you've applied to Aura funding for must be beyond existing activities already funded. So what we want to basically ensure, what we need to ensure, and our funders are obviously very keen on this, is just ensuring that what Aura is funding are additional activities beyond what is already happening. So we can ensure value for money for the funders of these calls. Okay. Sorry, I'm just going through all the questions to make sure I haven't missed any. It's a question about, is there any specific format for the project proposal? Just to reiterate, so we are using the application submittable to collect the project proposals, and there is a link to the application form on the Aura website. We are only accepting applications in that form. We will not be accepting applications just emailed to us. However, if for any reason you cannot access submittable or if it's not working for you, we can provide you with a Word version for you to complete and submit. But again, that will only be done in very rare cases where the application form does not work for you. So we will not be accepting just general emailed applications. But if you do have any issues with the submittable platform, please let us know. And this is just simply because it helps us manage the workflow in the Aura Secretariat. Okay. So we have a question about, again, private sector participation in this call. And the question is, can the private sector's company, if they're a consortium member of a non-for-profit organization, can they still apply? So I think I've worded that correctly, and apologies if I misinterpreted your question. But again, just to reiterate Chip's point, private sector partners, we really encourage private sector participation in this call as supporting partners. And as part and parcel of that, then, of being in a consortium or in a partnership with a non-for-profit entity. And many of Aura's most successful projects have followed this exact model, where NGOs on the ground have implemented projects with technical advice and expertise from private sector organizations, such as Willis Tower Watson and AXA XL, just to name two examples. But obviously, as Chip noted, we encourage private sector participation from beyond Aura membership. Okay. So we have a question about which type of grant organizations should apply for. So whether the pilot grant, which offers a funding of up to 150,000 USD, or the project grant, which offers up to 500,000. And the question is, do you advise to do a pilot or a project grant first? And also, is there potential connections between them? I.e., if the pilot grant went well, could you then move up to a project grant? So it's a really good question. With regards to what you should apply for first, I'd really encourage you to look at the deliverables, at what you want to achieve, and what funding is best matched for you achieving your goals. When we review all budgets, as I said, we review the budgets in relation to the objectives and the deliverables which you want to achieve, and then obviously how those contribute to the overall goals and eligibility of the call. If we see mismatches, i.e. a very inflated budget, which is not particularly connected to the deliverables, obviously then that project will tend to score lower in our evaluation. So yes, I really do think it's just about making sure you match your deliverables and outputs to whatever budget you feel is necessary for your organization to achieve those goals. In terms of graduating from a pilot project to a full project grant, so at this stage, as Chip noted, we are looking to fund both pilot and project grants through this call, and we have no preference of funding, for example, more project grants versus more pilot grants. That will purely depend on the types of projects we receive and which ones simply rise to the top through the evaluation process. And then also, as Chip said, it's possible that Aura will conduct additional calls for proposals. However, we cannot make that commitment just simply because it depends on many factors, as Chip described previously. So given that, I would say you should not rely on potentially graduating from a pilot to a project grant, as that would be contingent on additional funding, which at this stage we cannot guarantee. But Chip, I don't know if you have anything else to add to that question.
No, I agree. I mean, I think I've hopefully that's clear. Ultimately, it's a case of please apply for this project, or for this grant, and it is a grant. It's not a loan. I know there are a couple of questions around that, but yeah, it's a grant, and we suggest you apply. And indeed, you know, if we think you've applied for something that, or if we think that actually what you've applied for should be recategorized, then we'll probably let you know that in the course of our discussions. Look, I'm very conscious of time, and we've already slightly run over. We apologize if we haven't answered all your questions. There are, of course, well, hopefully we've answered quite a few. We've had sort of 30 minutes of Q&A, which I think is really important. Indeed, I think it shows the commitment from your side, and understanding, or hopefully the understanding of this whole process as well. We will, for those of you who still have questions and that we haven't answered them, please do take them and put them into the info@ email address. I'm afraid we can't do all of it now, but we really appreciate you taking the time to come onto this call. I know for some of you it's probably late with you, but we're really looking forward to receiving your applications in Submittable. Please do go to the website at the oceanriskalliance.org website, where all the information you should find there. But with that, I think we're going to call a halt to this call. There is another one, of course. There'll be another call at this afternoon here in the UK, 4:30. So you're very welcome to jump on that. But as Jack said at the beginning, we will be putting either this or the other one onto the website. So if you need any or you would like to watch this again, then you're very welcome to do so. But with that, thank you very much indeed for your interest. We're looking forward to receiving your submissions. And with that, I will close the call. Many thanks indeed, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.